Early in the semester, we were asked to complete a research brief on a Milwaukee related issue. So many things came to my mind, but being born and raised in Milwaukee, the one thing that has unfortunately been a constant topic is discrimination. Disparities in social injustices occurring simply due to one's race, which led me down the path to explore one of the main rooted issues causing the disparities, which is redlining. My name is Brianna Ross, and my presentation titled Unveiling the Legacy of Redlining, Milwaukee's Story, Understanding the Impact on Housing, Economy, and Community will allow you to get a better understanding of how redlining damages a community like Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So, redlining refers to the discriminatory practice of refusing or limiting financial services like loans or insurance to certain neighborhoods based on their racial or ethnic composition. It originated in the United States in the 1930s when the government created maps to determine the level of risk associated with lending in different areas, with red lines drawn around neighborhoods considered high risk, often due to their racial makeup. The purpose was to enforce segregation and deny economic opportunities to minority communities. The document you see here is a picture of an original description card that the HLLC would use to determine if areas were safe or not. Most areas in minority communities were likely to be labeled as hazardous. Milwaukee, like many other cities in the United States, has a history of redlining that has had significant impacts on the communities. Redlining in Milwaukee contributed to the segregation of neighborhoods along racial lines, limiting access to housing, credit, and economic opportunities for African American residents. Research has shown that 79.8% of Black Milwaukeeans would need to move to different neighborhoods before the city could be considered fully integrated. In the past 20 years, Milwaukee has officially beat out Detroit to become the most segregated city in the world. Does the zip code 53206 sound familiar to you? It's a local zip code here in Milwaukee that holds 95% of Black residents and also is the same zip code with the highest incarceration rates in America. Milwaukee's racial melting pot began to grow around the 1940s due to needing more labor. Around that time, Black businesses were thriving, so there was more opportunity available for steady incomes and a better way to live. As the Black population grew through the 1960s, you began to see Caucasian individuals actually move away from the area and relocate to the suburbs. An attorney from the NAACP even discovered that 16 out of 18 suburbs in Milwaukee use racially restrictive covenants to disinclude Black families from residential areas. This became the start of redlining in Milwaukee, which has continued to assist in promoting segregation in the city today. The Homeowners Loan Corporation, also known as HOLC, used a color-coded system to categorize neighborhoods based on their perceived risk for lending. The four categories were green, represented best neighborhoods with the highest credit worthiness. These areas were typically affluent and predominantly white. Blue, designated as still desirable neighborhoods, indicating a lower risk for lending. They were often middle-class areas, also predominantly white. Yellow, classified as definitely declining, neighborhoods with higher risk. These areas might have experienced some decline in property values or demographic changes. Red, labeled as hazardous neighborhoods with the highest risk for lending. They were typically areas with significant minority populations, often African American or immigrant communities. The redlining designation resulted in limited access to mortgage loans and other financial services in these hazardous neighborhoods, perpetuating segregation and economic disparities. Milwaukee's population is 40.9% African American, but only 23.7% of that number are homeowners. Redlining has played a huge contribution to this. Home ownership provides equity, which can be a profitable income, which is why real estate is known to be one of the quickest ways to financial freedom. But if you are being denied certain opportunities to purchase homes, decent interest rates, and even fair housing due to your race, how can you help create generational wealth? The answer is you can't. The maps displayed are HLOC maps used to zone out Wisconsin as a whole, more specifically Milwaukee. Areas such as Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, and parts of Madison are marked hazardous or high risk for lending. What do all those areas have in common? You guessed it, they house most of the African American individuals in the state of Wisconsin, especially Milwaukee. Redlining has long-term effects on cities such as Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It causes disinvestment, It stifles entrepreneurship and wealth accumulation. Bronzeville used to be a thriving community in Milwaukee back in the 1900s. Black businesses, families, and a positive sense of community. Unfortunately, between 1960 and 1968, there were grants provided to update infrastructure. The goal was to build new housing and modernize interstates, but the complete opposite transpired. The projects ended up destroying Black neighborhoods, much like Bronzeville. The urban renewal took more than 7,500 homes and businesses in the process due to demolition. Interstate 43, which was built directly through Bronzeville, was the major contribution to this change. Redlining contributes to disinvestment, decline in property value, and limited access to home ownership in several ways. Number one, limit access to credit. Redlining denies residents in redline neighborhoods access to mortgage and other forms of credit. Without access to credit, home ownership becomes difficult and potential buyers are unable to invest in properties, leading to a decline in property values. Higher interest rates. Even if residents in redline areas manage to secure loans, they often face higher interest rates and less favorable terms due to perceived risk by lenders. This makes home ownership more expensive and less attractive, further discouraging investment in the community. Decreased property maintenance. With limited financial resources available, property owners in redline neighborhoods may struggle to afford necessary repairs and maintenance. As a result, properties may deteriorate over time, contributing to a decline in property values. Lack of public and private investment. Redline areas are often neglected by both public and private investors who perceive these neighborhoods as high risk. The lack of investment leads to inadequate infrastructure, services, and amenities, further exacerbating decline and discouraging potential homeowners. Cycle of disinvestment. The combination of limited access to credit, higher cost of homeownership, deteriorating properties, and lack of investment creates a cycle of disinvestment in redline communities. This cycle perpetuates poverty, segregation, and economic inequality over the time. Overall, redlining not only restricts access to homeownership, but also undermines the economic viability and vitality of affected communities, perpetuating disparities and inequality. In 2020, we were hit with the COVID-19 pandemic. Black communities made up 52% of COVID-related families. When it comes to poverty rates in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Black individuals' poverty rate is 5 times higher compared to white community members. Due to redlining being a discriminatory practice, it has contributed to healthcare disparities by limiting access to quality healthcare services in historically marginalized communities like Milwaukee. These areas often lack healthcare facilities, have fewer healthcare providers, and face socioeconomic challenges that hinder access to care, exacerbating health inequities. A perfect example of this is well-known hospital to those who live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, known as St. Joseph's. There's a running joke that if anybody is injured or sick, take them anywhere but St. Joseph's. St. Joseph's Hospital is strategically placed at 5000 West Chambers, which is centralized, separating Milwaukee from the bordering lines of Wauwatosa, which is predominantly known for Freighter Hospital. 9 times out of 10, if you live in a community that has been labeled as hazardous or high risk, if you are having a medical emergency, the nearest hospital for care will be St. Joseph's, where many of us have heard horror stories of them being extremely short-staffed, not properly treating patients, and a ton of malpractice claims. This is a proven fact that redline areas can't even provide decent health care to its communities, which affects the health of many minorities in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. When it comes to education, areas that suffer from redlining often receive fewer resources for schools, leading to underfunded and overcrowded classrooms, outdated facilities, and limited access to quality education. Additionally, the economic instability caused by redlining has resulted in families being unable to afford supplementary education resources, such as tutoring or extracurricular activities, further perpetuating the cycle of education inequality. The education gap between Black and white students is the largest in the nation. Milwaukee Public School Systems is the education structure in which most redline communities receive their schooling from. For years, there has been constant fight about the lack of teachers, resources, and equal education that is being provided. There's inconsistent academic performance across schools, disparities in resources and opportunities between schools, concerns about safety and discipline, high dropout rates, and challenges in addressing the needs of diverse student populations, including English language learners and students with special needs. Additionally, there have been criticisms regarding administrative inefficiencies, budget constraints, and difficulty in engaging with parents and the community. Redlining has proven to provide a generational curse in which we all know how important the education is to one's success or possible failure in life. The fight against redlining in communities has gone on for decades and still continues to this day. Specifically in Milwaukee, a march that lasted for 200 days that began on August 27, 1967. Pamela Sargent, who was 11 at the time, participated in the marches so that Black individuals could have the right to better housing and education opportunities. She recalls during the march being hit in the head with a brick by a visibly upset mob of white individuals. Sargent, along with hundreds of other individuals who were mostly teens, were determined to fight against the redlining, continue to march, and did not let the racial slurs, threats, and imminent danger stop them from demanding change. That march helped contribute to the passing of the Federal Housing Act. 6 years later, that march also encouraged Milwaukee Common Council to pass an even stronger fair housing ordinance. The fight against redlining has involved various efforts from both governmental and community-based initiatives. The DOJ, Department of Justice, they have played a crucial role in enforcing fair housing laws and investigating cases of discrimination in lending and housing practices. Through legal actions, settlements, and consent decrees, the DOJ has worked to hold financial institutions and other entities accountable for discriminatory practices and to promote fair access to housing and financial services for all communities. Community initiatives. Community organizations, advocacy groups, and grassroots movements have been instrumental in raising awareness about redlining and advocating for policies and programs to address its effects. These initiatives often focus on increasing access to affordable housing, expanding economic opportunities, improving educational outcomes, and promoting community development in historically marginalized neighborhoods. So what's the progress? Over the years, there have been notable strides in combating redlining and its consequences. The passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968 was a significant milestone in prohibiting housing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Additionally, efforts to promote community reinvestment, affordable housing initiatives, and economic development programs have provided to revitalize underdeserved neighborhoods and expand access to housing and economic opportunities. While progress has been made, challenges remain in addressing and lingering effects of redlining and systematic inequalities. Continued advocacy, policy reforms, and community-led initiatives are essential to furthering the fight against redlining and advancing fair and equitable access to housing, education, and economic opportunities for all. So, who can you contact if you feel as if you have experienced discrimination as far as housing, redlining, mortgage rates, the whole board? You can contact the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Their contact number is 1-800-569-4287, or you can go to their website, which is hud.gov. You can also contact the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. Their contact is 1-855-411-2372. Their website is consumerfinance.gov/complaint. If you are specifically in the Milwaukee area, the local agency that you can contact is Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council, MMFHC. Their contact is 414-278-1240, or their website is mmfhc.org. With all this information that you received today, I'm hoping that you will join in the effort to stop redlining. It is definitely a discriminatory practice. It is causing health issues, financial issues, education issues in our backyard. I am hopeful that Milwaukee can definitely shape up, limit some of the segregation and things that we are experiencing, and actually take initiative to make a real change. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and thank you for listening.